Are you gonna Yep. Are we broadcasting this, David?
No, we'll just upload the recording
Got it.
since registration was open on our website to everyone, to anyone.
Are we waiting for me to do something or no?
No.
Oh no, people
Okay.
are coming in.
Okay.
We'll give you the cue. Thanks.
Just making sure.
Yeah, we usually give people about a minute or two to pop in.
Okay, got it.
In April, I'll do a quick intro first and then
Okay.
intros and then hop in. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, I think we can get started. The numbers stopped ticking up.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you all for being here this morning. Again, I want to acknowledge that we all had kind of an unexpected couple of days. So we're really grateful to you for being present and hope that all of you have come through fine and safe and dry. As a quick overview, we are here this morning to discuss the funding that PCF is really grateful to partner with the City of Clearwater to distribute. And this is funding designated for organizations in Clearwater that provide emergency social services of all different types. So we started this grant process with an LOI. And from that point, narrowed down the field to the 16 organizations that we're going to be discussing today. And so we thank all of you who are in attendance from these organizations for the time and thought that you put into your applications. We really want to appreciate the committee here for the time and thought that you all gave to reviewing and providing comments and really thoughtfully considering each of these. So we will start with some introductions. We'll first do the PCF staff, and then I will just name committee members. And what we would ask is if you share your name, whatever professional identification you want to include, and then a declaration of no conflicts of interest. So my name is Jocelyn Howard. I'm the Senior Program Officer for PCF's ARPA work, and I'll pass it over to David.
Hi everyone, I'm David Bender. I'm the Director of Grants here at PCF, and yeah, I'm helping with the tech today. Duggan.
Good morning, everybody. I too, like Jocelyn, want to thank the committee for your work to review the applications. I know it takes time to do that, and we appreciate you investing your time in helping us to work through this process. And for everyone else, I'm Duggan Cooley. I'm the CEO of the Pinellas Community Foundation.
And Amarella, if we could start with you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amarella Pescini. I am the Business Operations Manager at the Nonprofit Leadership Center of Tampa Bay. I don't have any conflict of interest with any of the organizations that I reviewed. Thank you all.
Thank you. On to Denise.
Good morning, I'm Denise Sanderson. I'm the Director of Economic Development and Housing with the City of Clearwater, and I do not have any conflicts of interest.
Dr. Branch.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Branch. I'm a professor and assistant dean at the University of Tampa, and I have no conflict of interest with any of the applications.
Joe.
Joe Lugo, founder and CEO of J3 Creation, and I have no conflicts of interest.
Thank you. Maria.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Maria Pepe, Community Liaison with Empath Health. And for this round, I have no conflict of interest with any organization.
Thank you. And April.
Good morning. I'm April Lott. I'm the President and CEO at Directions for Living located in Clearwater. I am also a resident of Clearwater. And I did refrain from scoring one proposal, the Neighborly Care Network.
Thank you so much. And we are really grateful that April is also serving as the chair of our committee today. So I will turn it over to you.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Again, like Jocelyn and Duggan said, thank you all. It has been a rough couple of days, and yet we still prevailed and were able to do all that needed to be done to give all of these applications the attention that they so deserved. So we have a big task ahead of us. We have about $650,000 that can be awarded, which means that we have about $1 million that we cannot fund. So the total of these applications totaled $1,687,000, and we have about $650,000 that we can award. So I'm assuming that everybody received the score sheet. Is that true? Everybody has the score sheet in front of them? Good. Okay. So I'm very interested to hear, there certainly are a couple of different ways that we could move through this. I do think that given each of the applications, they're, having a discussion about either we could have a discussion about all of them, or we could certainly have a discussion about the ones that scored the highest and basically have a cutoff, so to speak, of where we would cut off or start. Does the committee have a preference? Would you prefer to discuss all of them, or would you prefer to have a cutoff where we, as we understand, we're not going to be able to fund all applicants? So what is the wish of the committee?
Could we go through just each one from the top down? Because I did have a couple of questions for some of them that are in that top 5.
Oh, okay. Let me understand you, Dr. Branch. You want to go through all 16, or you want to go through the top 5 because you have questions for somebody in the top 5?
Yes, just the top 5. If we could kind of just start at the top and go down. Yeah, I just had some questions for some of those that are in the top 5.
Okay. Am I understanding, Jocelyn, where that line, that very thick line is that those top 5, if we were to fund all of them in their entirety, that would be our $650,000? Is that what that's indicating to me, or no?
Yes.
That is what that's
Correct.
indicating to me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very good. So I want to acknowledge Dr. Branch's request. I think Branch's request. I think that's fair. I'm wondering if we could agree to go all the way down, maybe to number 8. In other words, our cutoff maybe would be 80%. And so since that is at 81%, that we would start or that we would go all the way down to number 8. Would the committee be in agreement to do that?
Sure. Yes.
Do I have agreement from everybody?
Yes, that's fine. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, very good. Then why don't we start at the top, which is the Neighborly Care Network. Do we have questions for the Neighborly Care Network? Discussion, things that we want to talk about with this applicant?
No, I don't have any questions or anything. I would approve this one.
April, I don't have any questions either. Just wanted to point out that this is, of those top 5, this is the only one that is proposing a 24-month project. Everybody else is at a 12-month cycle. Not sure that matters in any way, just pointing it out.
I actually have a question about potential partial funding. I remember reading on the application, but I wondered if anybody from Neighborly could answer about what will be the impact if they don't receive 100% of what they are proposing.
Do we have Susan from Neighborly Care Network here to answer that?
Thank you.
Good
Susan,
morning.
before you respond, I'm so sorry. This is Denise Sanderson. I made a mistake. That is a 12-month proposal that you have. I happen to be looking at the wrong line item.
Thanks be to God, because my heart just stopped.
I'm so sorry.
Well, we reduced our ask from the 325,000 that we asked for in the very beginning with the letter of intent. So we've modified it as much as we can, understanding that all of our agencies are in tough times. But I think that we spelled it out by our request as far as the number of seniors that we're serving in Clearwater. But, you know, it can't be all or nothing in my estimation. So I trust the wisdom of the group on this one.
Thank you, Susan. I will say that I didn't say it kind of at the beginning. The organizations that are located in Clearwater and or who, you know, have had a pretty significant history of serving the residents of Clearwater, I am grateful that we can see that in the scoring that most of those have risen to the top of the scoring sheet. And I do think that makes sense and is appropriate. Okay, are there other conversation questions for this organization or any other feedback that we want to discuss?
The only question or feedback that I had is regarding to the capital investment that the organization is planning to do. And I was wondering if we do partial funding and we don't include the capital investment, what would be the impact? How, I know, I understand that it is needed, but what would be, I'm interested to know what would be the impact if the capital investment is not supported, the portion, that small portion.
Well, what happens is that the waiting list grows. People will not be fed. My last number is about 1,140 people on our waiting list. And in Clearwater, that was, I believe, 231 when we wrote this. So people don't get fed. Most of this money is for meals. It's all for meals except for one vehicle. So the impact is that food insecure and people who are at risk of malnutrition are the ones who will suffer, sadly. So that's really what it comes down to. Seniors will not get a visit. They won't have anybody looking at them or talking to them. And that's a lot of our clients. Our volunteers are the only people that they see in the course of a day. And we also notice their change of condition. So that's another safety issue. That's one of the most cost-effective you can find, that someone's out there seeing if there's a client in need and in real time reports that information to our staff to make sure that their family members are contacted or the police or fire department is called, or EMTs.
Thank you, Susan. Joe, I see that your hand is raised.
Yes, Susan, what I didn't get that number. It broke up. What's the total number in Clearwater that you're serving?
Yeah, let me tell you. Yes, 231 Clearwater residents are on the waiting list, in addition to the 614 that we're already serving. And of course, that number went up to 614 during COVID. And that's one of our challenges, not just in Clearwater, is to continue to support the ones that we took on. We eliminated our waiting list of about 1,000 that existed before COVID. We've kept all of those people. We have used all of our resources, all CARES money, any ARPA money that we can to continue to serve those folks. But our funding is currently, our OAA funding is currently at 2019 levels. I don't think most of us could continue to live the way we're living if that's what we were depending upon.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions for Susan? Okay, are we ready as a committee to vote on the funding for Neighborly Care Network?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so
Yes.
Neighborly Care Network has requested a total of $215,477. All those in favor of full funding say aye.
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 All those opposed?
I just wondered if there could be a little bit of wiggle room to allow maybe other smaller requests to come up.
Okay, I think that's a fair question, Maria. We can certainly wait to call for vote at the end of the discussion of all of them, if you would prefer. I will caution the committee. This is from my perspective as the chair, which is that, and as a person who runs a not-for-profit organization and who's been through this process, on the other side, 500 times, is that, when we start reducing people's asks, we often compromise their ability to do. And when everybody gets a little bit, but nobody gets all of what they need, we tend to compromise. So I would caution us against doing that, even though I understand that there is, we want to fund as many applications as we can. The other thing I just want to say as the chair, and I hope it was noteworthy to all of you in these applications, this ARPA funding is one-time funding. And so all of the requests that are requesting funding for one-time expenses are to be applauded. Many of these applications were asking for funding to create additional staff positions, and none of them really had a viable, with the exception of a handful, had a viable sustainability plan. And again, based on, as the CEO of a nonprofit organization, it's a slippery slope when you start asking for reoccurring expenses in a one-time funding request. In this case, to your question, Maria, which was about the capital expense, what I will say is for those organizations that were requesting funding for one-time expenses, I want to applaud them. It is far easier to spend one-time money on one-time expenses than to fund organizations for costs that we know will be recurring with no sustainability plan. In any case, is the committee then in agreement that we would refrain from voting maybe on the request until we've gone through the first all the way down to number 8? Is everybody good with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Maria, for pointing that out. A point of clarification, David, in some of the rank and reviews that I've done before, we kind of do a round 2, a round 3, kind of with percentages and or with amounts. Are we doing that here today, or is someone will someone be taking those kinds of notes for us, or will we just be holding it in our brains?
Do you mean filling in the amounts for each one, or?
Yeah.
I can populate them with preliminary figures, and then at the end so I'll fill in Neighborly at full for right now, and
yes.
then as you go on, you can adjust.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
And I can, whenever you want me to pop it up or take it back down, just let me know. That's
okay, perfect.
Usually easier than me trying to guess.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, next up then, in terms of ranking or scoring is Hope Villages of America. Hope Villages of America, also located in Clearwater, longstanding history in Clearwater, operates a food bank among other things, and they have scored an 89%. The request is $150,000, with the vast majority of that going to food, and a smaller portion going to support a variety of staff positions. So what feedback do we have from the committee, or questions do we have for Hope Villages of America?
The only comment that I had regarding the Hope Villages of America is that the need was very well explained. The impact was very well explained. So it was an application that the need was clear, the impact was clear, the sustainability of the program after these funds are ended was very clear. So that's the only comment that I had.
My comments are pretty similar, just pointing out additionally that there was clear evidence that most of the funding would directly impact citizens of Clearwater.
I did have a question here of what would be the process if a client speaks a language other than English or Spanish? I noticed many of the applications addressed that, but this one did not. So I'm curious if there's somebody from there, maybe it was just something not put in there, but what would be the process if one of the clients did not speak English or Spanish and spoke a different language?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
This is Judith Warren, Vice President of Grants and Contracts. Yes, we do have a, I'm going to not articulate this well, a line that we use to translate. So it's a third-party line that is used.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Joe, excuse me. Go ahead, Joe.
Hi, Judith. It's my understanding that you employ several Spanish-speaking employees. Is that correct?
We do.
Translation?
Yes, our program manager, our director of program services is bilingual, and he's on site at all times. Our warehouse manager is bilingual. He's on site or in the community delivering. So I can confidently say with volunteer source that 100% of the time we have someone bilingual present.
Thank you.
That was, I thought, a very strong piece of this application. I was, impressed and noteworthy of that they will support more children, as we know that our children are one of the largest groups of food insecure people that, and they had a focus on children. In my notes, recognizing that they had quite a few staff that were identified in the application as bilingual, in particular Spanish speaking. They also provided options for if the award was reduced. They gave us option 1, option 2, and option 3. I appreciated that, quite frankly. One question that I would have of Judith is, Judith, for example, if we wanted to award the full amount of $150,000, but we wanted it all to go to food and direct service and none of it to go to the recurring expenses of staff, could you make that happen?
It's not ideal, but yes.
So I do appreciate, again, as the CEO of a nonprofit, right, the expense that comes with operating services and you know that we have to have human beings to provide those services. I do get, as I said earlier, rather concerned about using one-time funding to support recurring expenses, and when there is not really a good sustainability plan, my fear, the risk I think that happens is that things get started, and in this case would get started for 12 months and then at the end would have to go away because they can't afford to keep the staff that are in position attached to it. So are there any other thoughts or questions for this applicant? Any discussion with the group? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the next applicant. Thank you, Judith. The next applicant is the ARC of Tampa Bay. Their request was $57,264. This organization is located in Clearwater. Their application is to continue to provide services that have recently been discontinued as a result of a loss of funding. This is for psychosocial rehab for a very specific population. Do we have discussion among the committee?
I have questions along the lines of your concerns, April, which it has to do with staff. Nobody wants to do layoffs. Nobody wants to leave the community without a service if funding suddenly stops. So if they could address, again, I know it was on the application, but if somebody could address the efforts they're doing at this point to, you know, to ensure sustainability of these services.
Hi, this is Carolyn Reginelli with the ARC Tampa Bay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I did kind of touch base with our director of finance. With this program, what we've done is we've hired or contracted with an outside credentialing specialist because our biggest issue has been insurance plans that some of our clients have that aren't we're not necessarily credentialed with to provide that service. So we brought this vendor on board in May, and since that time, she has managed to get 2 unfunded clients back to funding. So, and I know anyone that's probably had any history with working with insurances and credentialing, it takes months. So we at least have 2 of our 6 or 7 clients that were unfunded who are now funded. So hopefully we can continue with that momentum and within the next several months have more clients whose insurance plans are credentialed.
Thank you, Carolyn.
And really kind of what I think I mentioned in the application was, you know, it's as far as we could modify how we provide services to unfunded individuals. We would hope not to do that because we are seeing big benefits from this everyday type of counseling. But, you know, there are paths to try to, you know, sustain the funding. But our goal is that the end of the year that we have all these unfunded individuals funded.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Okay.
I do want to acknowledge that in the proposal, they articulated, right, this need to assist with credentialing and getting these services covered by insurance and Medicaid and other insurance providers. It is a difficult process. I think they should be applauded for at least investing in the credentialing specialists to attempt to untangle that mess that has been created in the state of Florida. All right, other questions for the ARC? Other discussion points for the committee? Yes, Denise. Can't hear you. Denise, we can't hear you.
So sorry, thank you. So not a question, really just a comment. What I really liked about this application, this was my top scoring application, is that the funding will provide a bridge to long-term sustainability. You know, we talked about this already this morning, that once this funding dries up for some of these projects, what happens then? And to me, what spoke to me in this application is quite the opposite. So
yes, I agree. I agree. And for what I'm going to call a modest investment, we will keep services delivered to a very vulnerable population, with the ARC taking the responsibility to sustain it long term. I couldn't agree more. Okay, any additional questions, discussion? Thank you, Carolyn. All right, next up was the Boys and Girls Club of the Suncoast. They are requesting $100,000 for Prosperity Pathways. They are located in the city of Clearwater. They are projecting to serve 65 youth from the city of Clearwater in their funding request. And I personally thought that their projected outcomes were phenomenal. And if we could achieve those outcomes in the city of Clearwater, we would all be better for it. So what questions, discussion does the committee have for the Boys and Girls Club of the Suncoast? Any comments about this application in particular?
The comment that I had regarding this proposal is that we are looking to fund a new program. And that is interesting. And let's say they have done a very good job explaining the outcomes from this application, from supporting them with this funding. But I would like to hear a little bit more about the why the need, how did this come as a need now for this program, and any track records of the success to date. I don't know if there is someone from the organization.
Yep.
Hi, this is Mandy Burnett Taylor, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Boys and Girls Clubs. And this program for us is newer, but we have actually, we received some funding and have started it in the Pinellas High Innovation Center, but we don't have any data yet. We literally just started this school year, but working with the school district over the past few years and trying to figure out a way to help those students that, you know, aren't attending school on a regular basis, are not doing well academically, or having some behavioral issues, really drove us to put this program together to help those children who are in need.
Yes. And I'm Cassie Cackley, Chief Development Officer for Boys and Girls Club of the Suncoast. We say new program, but it's been years in the making. And to piggyback off Mandy, it's something we've been in discussions with the Pinellas County School Board in for years. We had a pilot program pretty similar at Azalea Middle School. And while we've been actively working at Azalea Middle School, that school has turned around from a D school to a B school. So we've seen some great gains there, and we're hoping to do the same thing with the students in Clearwater. especially these students that really need extra help and assistance. Good question.
Thank you both.
My question to either Mandy or Casey is, again, I loved this proposal. I see an incredible benefit to the youth of Clearwater. My reservation for the funding is exclusively around that this is recurring costs in a one-time funding application, and that I didn't really see a viable sustainability plan. Can you speak to us about, with this $100,000 investment that will go away? I believe your request was for 12 months. So at the end of 12 months, those funds would be expired. What is the sustainability plan beyond the 1 year?
Yes, good question. And the last thing we want to do is put a program into place and take it away from children. So that is not our hope, and that's not what we're seeking to do. We have some other corporate funders, and this is also a part of our board strategic plan, this initiative. So it's top priority for our organization. So we have some fundraising initiatives that are in place that will assist in the sustainability of the program. We need help with getting the outcomes in the first year and getting it off the ground. And that's why we seek and sought out this funding opportunity. But we've got great partners that have stepped up, but the timing just wasn't there for us to get it off the ground until later on in the future. So we're not too concerned about the sustainability of it. We know this is such a needed program, and we've got great partners who want to help and keep it going. We needed the assistance to get it off the ground and get it implemented in this first year.
Is it something that the board and your executive leadership would say that would be a priority for sustainability? In other words, I'm assuming you have other projects that you have to keep rolling as well. Would this be one that, assuming you get the same outcomes that you've talked about at Azalea Middle, that would be a priority, like the top priority for any new funding for you, or is it the third priority for any new funding? What would the prioritization of this program be, assuming you're getting the same outcomes?
Good question. It'd be top priority. Our strategic plan, this is our number one priority. This is a huge need that our area faces with life skills, and especially this targeted population of students that we're seeking to serve. These are some of the hardest reached youth in our area that just really lack the resources. So this would be top priority for our CEO and our board.
Thank you, Casey. Any other discussion from the committee? Any other questions for Mandy or Casey? Okay, thank you, Mandy and Casey, for being with us today. All right, next up, we have CASA, Community Action Stops Abuse. Their request is $126,110. The only noteworthy of this particular application is that they are not currently physically, so to speak. They have been historically known as a St. Pete location. Their application certainly did point out that they now have a location and/or a lot of future plans for the city for North County, and in particular in Clearwater. What questions, thoughts, conversation, dialogue would you like to have about CASA? Denise.
Thanks, April. Just wish to point out this applicant submitted a 10% indirect cost rather than the cap of 5%. The difference would be at $4,211. So I recommend we would reduce the indirect cost to that 5% cap.
Okay, thank you for that, Denise. My notes indicate that 17 to 31% of the people being served currently by CASA are currently from Clearwater, that these funds are projected to increase that number by 10%. I was, as we all know, this is a domestic violence specific organization. The fact that we have 10% perhaps of DV victims and or survivors who are not being served from Clearwater, and I'm not sure if I can make that assumption, but to say, right, that 10% more could be served would suggest that 10% are not being served, obviously is frightening. I did think that their sustainability plan was excellent. Again, as you know, I've said 15 times already, right, that one-time funds being used for recurring expenses is a significant concern of mine. But the sustainability plan contained in this application was on point, that they have an identified funding source, which is VOCA, the Victims of Crime Act, that they have the capacity to put these expenses next year into an application or proposal. And the proposal suggested that it was almost a sure thing. We might be able to ask that question. They did have 3 excellent letters of support. They do have 1 board member on their board from Clearwater, which I thought was meaningful and important. The proposal did talk about improvements to a Clearwater property, and so I do think maybe we should ask a question about that if we have somebody here from CASA.
Good morning. This is Jill Flansburgh, Grants and Compliance from CASA. Yes, recently we did purchase a piece of property in Clearwater, and we are starting to get ready to do renovations to it. This started with some funding we got from HUD for a housing project. We wanted to specifically put that housing project in the North County since we are serving so many residents from there. And I mean, our county is tiny, but the geography makes it a little bit difficult, especially if you're using public transportation to come from North County to our headquarters in South County. So we are now trying to renovate some structures that are there, get the infrastructure ready to put some tiny homes down and come to Clearwater and do services. I wanted to point out, April, about the increase in numbers, and certainly that's a guess. Last October, we built and opened a family justice center, which is basically a one-stop for domestic violence and other abuse victims. We anticipated that we would get maybe 25 persons a week, appointments and walk-ins. We have found over the course of the last 6 months that we get between 40 and 60 walk-ins, not appointments, people who just come in off the street. About a third of them are from North County. So we're anticipating that if I can use the adage, if you build it, they will come. So if we are there in Clearwater, it'll be a lot easier for them to come and visit us and get the services they need.
Good, thank you, Jill, for that clarification. Again, I do think using one-time funds for one-time expenses such as renovations or capital improvements is an excellent way to use one-time funding. My other question is really around the staffing, the recurring cost for 6 months, again, with a fantastic sustainability plan. My only, and I don't know that there's a question in here, Jill, but my only feedback is I do think that if I'm doing the calculation correctly, that this position would pay $45,000 a year. If I'm doing the calculation correctly, what I want to say to this entire committee, and then certainly to you, Jill, is we've got to increase wages for staff doing this work. $45,000 is not a livable wage. And quite frankly, I think the wage and the salary of this position or similar should be closer to $65,000. I just want to use my role as chair to say that when we are underfunding The work, we often get turnover, we get vacancies in position, and the work actually doesn't get done. So while we're trying to stretch dollars by underpaying staff, it often backfires. So am I doing the calculation correct, Jill, that it is a $45,000 a year position?
Yes, that's right. And I appreciate your comments, and this will give me another good excuse to take it back to our HR and leadership. Thank you.
Yes, I do. As for the benefit of the entire committee, I do think that we have to look at, and not necessarily for this particular funding source, which is one-time funding, but we do need to start having the conversation about livable wages for people in social services. We currently have a void of staff, and lots of vacancy, and quite frankly, it is because we are nickel and diming these professionals and trying to underpay them. And so I would encourage Jill and any applicant that's listening, right, that they go back and they start looking at, when they're making applications for recurring expenses and staff, is that we are looking at raising these wages. Are there any other questions, comments, questions for Jill, discussion from the committee for this particular application?
I just hope that they will get the VOCA funding this cycle that is coming, so they will not have any gap to cover for the position. That's my only hope.
Jill, do you want to speak to the certainty that was suggested in the application for VOCA funding? Do you want to speak to that certainty?
Sure. I of course, nothing is 100% certain, but we have been working with VOCA for years and have been very successful in getting exactly what we want for direct service positions. We just fit their definition so well. They, as April said, it's the Victims of Crime Act, and so they like to fund programs like CASA.
Thank you, Jill.
Okay, are there other questions for this proposal? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Jill, for being here and answering questions. Next up is the Homeless Emergency Program, HEP. What questions do we have, comments or discussion from the committee on this proposal? Denise.
Yes, just wish to point out that HEP is to receive $15,983 in CDBG public services funding for housing navigation salary support. So I would recommend that if the committee chose to fund this organization for this program, that we would reduce their grant request by the amount awarded under CDBG by the City of Clearwater.
Okay, Maria.
Yes, so when I was going through the application, it's a robust application. I believe there is a need. However, I have questions regarding goals. I like to see goals that are attainable, and with the housing market in Pinellas County, it's not the homeless empowerment program's fault, or anybody's fault, but I wonder how a program like this can ensure the accomplishment of these goals when so many things are completely out of our control.
Do we have a representative from HEP here with us that could answer that question?
I don't see our typical representative or two of the typical representatives in the attendees list.
I do think that Maria's observation is a good one. That was noted in my notes as well. I actually noted, right, the outcomes are incredible. If we could, I mean, single-handedly, right, if we could accomplish that, I did think that the outcomes, the proposal just simply lacked clarity on how we would achieve those outcomes. And because of some of the things that Maria has pointed out, right, the housing market is just pretty untenable at the moment. Again, my other thoughts on this proposal, some of the strengths obviously is that this is a Clearwater-based organization and one that has tremendous history in Clearwater. Some of my concerns, as you might imagine, are that it was for 3 positions, again, using non-reoccurring funding to fund 3 positions, and worried about the sustainability. I didn't think that we got much information on the sustainability plan in terms of how they would continue those positions. The salaries also were exceptionally low. If I'm doing the math correctly, again, I just want to point out that we cannot pay people $40,000 a year. And we certainly can't pay them $40,000 a year and get the outcomes that we're talking about. They won't stay in position. We'll constantly be replacing them. $40,000 is not a livable wage. And our staff then almost become the client. So I will point that out. I am sad that this program didn't make the top tier, so to speak. And I would say if they were present, that I hope that perhaps this project could get strengthened in a variety of ways, and that they would continue to, what I'm going to call, shop this program and look for funding sources moving forward. I do think that it's something that is needed, not just in Clearwater, by the way, but throughout Pinellas County. Any other comments or discussion among the committee on this proposal?
I don't have anything new to add, as much as to just echo that I agree with you completely, April.
Thank you, Dr. Branch. Okay, next up is number 7, which is the St. Pete Free Clinic. They have requested $50,000, although I will say to you that I don't know if this was noted for any of the rest of you. The request, and I double checked this a half a dozen times, was $50,000. However, in the narrative, it appears that they are requesting $325,000. So I am confused, and I think that would be my first question. If we have somebody here from the St. Pete Free Clinic, and it looks like we do, if we could get some clarification on the actual request.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Zoe Blair Andrews. I'm the Director of Grants Management over here at the St. Petersburg Free Clinic. I apologize greatly for that oversight. We actually reduced our ask amount from the LOI to the full application phase. After learning more about the funding that's available, we wanted to make sure that our request was aligned with what we truly need at this point, and also to give other people space to have an opportunity for these funds as well. And so that was just missed when we submitted our full application. But to confirm, our current ask would be $50,000.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That is makes a lot more sense, because I was so like, well, I don't know what's happening here. Okay, what are some thoughts and or discussion or questions for this applicant? Denise? Anything?
You could tell.
Yeah.
Well, my notes, and I don't recall some of the specifics at this point. I don't have the application open, but my notes were that it was unclear to me if the requested funds would result in a direct spend for increased food distribution in Clearwater. I don't know if anybody else had concerns along.
Yes, I too, again, what was noteworthy for so many of these applicants, quite frankly, there were 4 or 5 of them, I believe, that referenced each other. And so there was a bit, for me, there was a bit of confusion. I don't operate in the food bank world. I almost wish that we could have had a little diagram, because it certainly suggested that this applicant, for example, spoke about delivering food to the Salvation Army and to Hope Villages of America. And in a couple of the other applicants, right, Hope Village of America, for example, talked about, right, that their partnership and who they support and or get food from, right, was the Feeding Tampa Bay, I think. And so I too was a bit confused by that. Maybe Zoe can help answer that question.
Yes, definitely. So, to give a little bit of context about our particular ask. So we operate the largest food bank in Pinellas County, and so we do have 60 partner agencies throughout Pinellas. We ran some statistics and discovered that a large percentage of our actual food pounds are going to individuals that live in Clearwater through some partnerships like Feast. And so we are able to, because of the scale of our operation, we're able to negotiate really competitive rates and buy in bulk. And so that allows us to help support some of the food banks and food pantries across the county, specifically a large presence in Clearwater. And so we would ensure, if funded, that these particular dollars went to solely purchase food to support those food banks and organizations that are physically located in Clearwater.
I think my question is, of the 16% served, I guess the clarification I'm looking for is would then the funds be used to purchase the food to support what you said located in Clearwater? So I'm assuming that means that the funds would be used to purchase food that would go directly to Hope Villages of America, for example?
Yeah, so yeah, that's one of our partners that are in the Clearwater zip code location. We have several others as well. So we would just make sure that we pulled those partners that are physically located in the city of Clearwater, and that any dollars from this particular grant went straight to the purchase of food for those organizations.
So for the committee, I would say that, I would be curious then, maybe when we get to the voting around funding, and I don't know if Judith Warren is still available around Hope Villages of America, but my question would be, if this proposal is not funded, and Hope Villages of America is fully funded, does Hope Villages of America not have the ability to do what they've proposed to do without the support that it would be coming from the St. Pete Free Clinic in their proposal? Am I making sense? In other words, are they connected? So if St. Pete Free Clinic doesn't get $50,000 to purchase food for the city of Clearwater that would be going to places like Hope Villages of America, can Hope Villages of America still do what they've proposed to do, which is to feed people in Clearwater? Am I making sense? It just feels to me like they were all kind of, if you're getting food from St. Pete Free Clinic and you don't get that food, I'm just wondering how that then works. Maria?
So that was almost like the question that I had regarding Safety Harbor, the Mary Williams neighborhood center, because we're talking about food insecurity in different zip codes of the city of Clearwater. So that's why I was also looking at wiggle room on other applications, understanding that Neighborly is very specific, caring for our seniors. But I also see Safety Harbor, which we haven't made it there yet, as a very specific area of Clearwater that they are serving, because it's easier for people to get to the neighborhood center in Safety Harbor than to go to other locations in Clearwater. So I saw what I don't want to see. I don't want to see it as duplications. So I think, April, your question will clarify if at any point any of us had any type of questions about duplication of funding when it comes to food insecurity in Clearwater and the proposals that we were looking at. So it's more a comment.
Yes,
I agree. Than a question. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if I could pop in, do you want to hear from Judith again?
I would like,
April?
Yes, I would like to hear from Judith about the relationship between their proposal in purchasing food and the St. Pete Free Clinic, who is the one they purchase food from, how that would work.
Okay, so this was an interesting learning curve for myself when I came on at Hope Villages of America. So let me talk about some ways that we kind of crosswalk with each other. So Hope Villages of America is the sole provider in Pinellas County of what is called TFAP. So that is the Emergency Food Assistant Program. So feeding them, so think USDA goes to Feeding America, who then comes to us. And so we give that food to St. Pete Free Clinic. They are one of our recipients of that money, of that food. JWB has mobile food boxes that they give out for families. They give that food directly to St. Pete Free Clinic, who in turn gives that food to us. So there is some crosswalk. I think where the rubber hits the road here is the money given to us going to be impacted through this particular grant? And the answer is absolutely not.
Okay. So Hope Villages of America will be able to do all of the things that you outlined in the application in terms of feeding Clearwater residents.
Yes.
Without the $50,000 that the St. Pete Free Clinic has asked for to do virtually the same thing.
Absolutely. We're all intertwined. We count on each other. We're all trying to meet the same goal in the community. I applaud all our partner providers for the great work that we do. We all need each other, but for the purposes of this grant, our impact to the community won't be affected.
Okay. Thank you. I think I saw one other. Amarella, did you have, there you are, go ahead.
Yeah, I had, mine is mostly a general comment about the food banks and the food insecurity. When I was reading the applications, and all applications that were regarding food insecurity had one thing in common: more fresh food, more protein food, more, let's say, yeah, that kind of stuff. So the need is visible all across all applications. My thinking was, what about the food that we are collecting and we are gathering now? How much, what is the percentage of that goes to waste? How can we redirect that amount of money into more fresh produce? And that's the question that I had, but it's a general question, or a general thought that I would like us to, I don't know if it is possible, but I'm really interested to know how much of those canned food that we give to people that is not cultural friendly, how much of that goes to waste.
Oh, okay. So I was misunderstanding your question initially. I thought your question initially was about the food that goes, not necessarily the food that's going to food banks. So you're talking about food that's being donated, that is going to waste, being donated to food banks that is
also purchased. And also purchase, but I know that we prepare food boxes in advance and we put stuff, most of the centers operate like that. They mix produce and not every family is the same as the other one. So they might not use some of the food that is in that. So is there any potential, and maybe this is just a general comment and doesn't need an answer, but is there potential to redirect some of those funds or money or need towards more fresh produce, cultural friendly food, and things like that? That's a general comment, and none of the organizations that are here in this meeting today have to answer, but it's just something that it made me think of when I was reading the applications.
Yeah, and I did think that was, I thought some of the applicants did a better job than others about talking about that issue in particular around food choice and, you know, client or individuals, families, and others' ability to truly select the food that is, you know, culturally appropriate and that they simply like and want. I thought the more people did that, right, the more dignified and, you know, that system was. I will also say that the applicant number 9 on our list who did not make the cutoff, and so we won't be discussing their proposal. But I did think that the idea of 360 Eats, right, that they were really focused on waste and using waste so that food didn't go to waste and creating kind of some opportunity there. But I think your point, Amarella, is slightly different, which is, right, when we put boxes together of food and assume that the person receiving that box will enjoy and or be able to eat all of it is a pretty big assumption, and one that probably is creating waste. So I don't think there was necessarily a question in that, so we will not recognize Zoe at this point. We'll just move forward. We have one more application who met the cutoff that scored above 80%. They scored at 81% for the, I think for the sake of their proposal and their score, we'll give the group an opportunity to discuss the proposal, which is Healthy Start Coalition of Pinellas. Their request was for $140,000. What questions, comments, concerns do we have with this proposal? Any discussion for Healthy Start?
I think my comment, you know, when I was doing the review process, my thing is we have many urgent needs. I love the idea of a lot more pregnant people qualifying for Healthy Start services. But when we looked at all the proposals addressing food insecurity and mental health, it kind of, those two needs went up as something that, you know, needs to be addressed right away. I see the long-term goals of their proposal. I am a believer of starting with pregnant families right away, and I understand that the criteria right now leaves some families out of those services, but it did not match necessarily to me with the other urgent needs that we're addressing with the ARPA funding.
Yes, I agree, Maria. I thought the proposal, again, I don't think any of us could ever deny that maternal care, in particular maternal care to often underserved populations is incredibly important. My concern about this proposal, quite frankly, is that that when we start asking municipalities to support and or particular funding sources dedicated to, in this case, Clearwater, to support, I start to wonder, are we asking all municipalities and or all cities to contribute? In other words, if we have to have special funding to serve our pregnant moms in Clearwater, do we have to have special funding in Clearwater and in Safety Harbor and in St. Pete? In other words, I just want to make sure that there's some equity around, well, of course we should be serving Clearwater, and I would be interested, in making sure that I think it gets slippery. They do say that 20% of the people currently served are in Clearwater. I didn't think the outcomes were specific to Clearwater, however, and I was concerned about that. In other words, how do we, right? This is Clearwater funding. And as a resident of Clearwater myself, I'm particularly concerned about my people in Clearwater. And so, this funding is for Clearwater. And so we want to make sure that our Clearwater peeps are getting everything they can get with this funding. Are there any questions that we have of the applicant or any other discussion that we want to have regarding the proposal for Healthy Start Coalition of Pinellas? Okay, seeing none, I think we should go back to the top. Maybe David, if you could throw that document up there that you had a minute ago. So the initial discussion that we kind of put a pause on is that Neighborly Care Network, which has requested $215,477. This proposal, as we can see here, scored the highest. A portion of this would be for a one-time capital expense, which is the purchase of a vehicle. All the rest of the dollars were going to food. I'd like to hear from we originally said full funding in this category. Is there any discussion or anything that you would like to see about this, the actual funding?
I'll just say that I would still support full funding.
Okay, so we have, I'm going to call it a motion to move forward with full funding for this application at $215,477. Do we have other discussion? Okay, I would like to move for a vote then for full funding for Neighborly Care Network. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? I'm going to refrain from voting on this particular application. Nonetheless, I hear a unanimous yes for $215,477 for Neighborly Care Network. Okay, next up is Hope Villages of America. They have requested $150,000. The vast majority of that being for food and direct support to feeding the residents of Clearwater. There's a handful of expenses in here that would go to staff, which are recurring expenses. Quite frankly, I did not see a good sustainability plan for how we would fund those positions moving forward, except to say that in option 1, when they provided option 1, 2, and 3, they did outline in option 1 that they could find resources to support staff if we were to reduce their amount. My question to the applicant at the time was, even if we don't reduce your application, could $150,000 be spent on food and go directly to food? As you heard from Judith, it was not ideal, is what she said, but it could be done. So anything from the group related to do we want to ask the applicant to spend that money differently? Do we want to move forward with the full amount? Do we want to reduce that amount? What are your thoughts?
I would support the full amount with the way that the application was written.
Okay, Joe?
I think I would support it with going directly to the folks that they're serving.
Other thoughts from Denise?
I think one of the challenges, and I would love to hear for those of you who are, April, you're probably the best expert on this. I think the hardest funding to get is salary support. And so I would urge us to consider providing salary support for this applicant, because it is difficult to obtain through public sources.
I also think that it was well explained on the application. They were also transitioning. They now have their new CEO, and it will, I think, improve their funding seeking in the future. So it creates sustainability for those increases on their staff. So I support, like I believe Dr. Branch, the full amount and the way it was written.
I'm in favor of supporting the application for full amount and as it was written for the same purposes or reasons that were mentioned before.
Okay, so I am hearing pretty much the majority being for full funding as it was written, which would include recurring staff support, believing, right, that they have a sustainability plan under the new CEO that would secure those dollars for the staff moving forward. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those, any opposed? Very good. Okay, next up is the ARC of Tampa Bay for $57,264. This application is to fund individuals who were receiving services where services were no longer going to be paid for. They do have a very good sustainability plan in terms of hiring their credentialing specialists who are going to get more insurance panels and others to agree to continue to pay via insurance for these services. This is a contracted provider, as I understood it in the application. And so they're requesting $57,274. Is there any discussion about the amount, reducing the amount, keeping the amount the same? Any other thoughts from the committee?
I'm in favor of keeping the amount the same as proposed and the funding the needs that are proposed.
I second that.
I agree.
Okay, good. Okay, hearing from 4 of our committee members. All those in favor say aye.
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 I vote aye as well. That passes unanimously. Okay, next up is $100,000 for the Boys and Girls Club of the Suncoast. This is to support 65 youth in the city of Clearwater. They discussed with us that they do have a priority plan for all future funding to go to support this project. This is a 12-month project with the vast majority going to reoccurring expenses at $100,000. Any further discussion, thoughts about the amount, anything that we want to discuss about the amount?
I supported the way it's written on the full amount.
I do as well.
Same.
Okay, hearing from 3 and nods from the rest. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mine's an aye as well. That passes unanimously at $100,000. Okay, next up is the CASA, the Community Action Stops Abuse, at $126,110. We do have a note in the notes section that we need to reduce to the cap of 5% for indirect costs, which would bring their total ask to $121,899. Any discussion about this amount or anything else related to their ask?
I would support fully funding with the application.
Agreed.
So good. Seeing a motion, so to speak, in a second, and agreement from a third, and head nods from the rest. All those in favor of $121,899 being awarded to CASA, say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion, I am an aye as well. That passes unanimously. So David, then what does that do? We have about $6,000, $5,500, somewhere around that left. Is that correct?
Yes.
For the sake of the committee, I think perhaps the question would be, could we add the remaining amount to either our number 1 or our number 2 ranking proposals? Both of those had a significant amount of dollars specifically to purchase food. So I would imagine that if we increased either one of them or divided the amount between the two of them, it would be up to the committee. That simply what that would permit them to do is to purchase more food, and serve more people, perhaps. What are the thoughts of the committee?
I like that idea.
Yeah, I do too. Is that possible, David?
Yes, and what we'll do is just amend their budget files to go in their contract with that additional amount.
Would the committee prefer to I think, what is the amount, David, exactly? $5,000, $4,000? What is it?
5,360. So divided by 2, that'd be 2,680 each.
Do we want to do
to the top 2?
Yeah. Do we want to do 2,680 each to the top 2? Do we want to do it to the top ranking? How would you like to do it as a committee?
I think I would prefer neighborly care receive all of it.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree too.
You agree? Okay. All those in favor of adding the $5,000 plus to Neighborly Care Network, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. I am refraining from a vote there. However, that passes without my vote. So the additional dollars will be added there. Okay. Thank you, David, for putting that up there. I think that was helpful for us to see. With that said, are there any other comments, questions, feedback that we want to give to the process, to the applicants, to PCF?
I guess I'll just say it was a pleasure to read about the amazing things people are doing in the community. And so I really do appreciate all the efforts of our applicants.
Same
I
here.
would ditto that, and also wish to thank PCF. We are the funding agency to PCF, and so happy to be able to partner with them on this. But we all know that management of grants and grantees is really difficult and a heavy lift, and PCF is doing a lot of that work for us, and we so appreciate it.
Happy to. And I'll just pop in with next steps for both those getting funded and those not. Those who are funded later today will receive a pre-contract form in the grant portal you use to apply. You fill that out and we'll get moving with contracts. For those not chosen, in the next few days, you'll get feedback with all the committee comments and the average score on each rubric. So you'll see where you could have improved and then comments from the committee. So hopefully in future requests that will help you. And each applicant will be getting that.
I do see on the agenda that we have public comments for items. Is that true? Or am I misreading that?
Yes. Good. Okay. Thank you. So if we have, public comment for items not on the agenda. So that would be anything but the review.
And is that exclusive to us as committee members, or is that also open to others?
Open to attendees as well.
Okay.
We have Janet, and then we'll have Judith.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all for all the efforts. I know we weren't chosen, and I know that sometimes we aren't as clear with our grant process or what we write because we're not a big boy. We don't have the big funders, right, or development people to write the grants. But I also know how much effort it takes for all of you and all the time you spent reading everything. And without you, none of the funding gets anywhere. So I just want to thank you all for the due diligence that you spent reading all the grants and making the tough choices, because they are. There's never an easy way. There's never enough money to help everybody in the world. So, but I thank you all for your volunteer service, and again, you guys do a great job, and you've taken on a heavy lift. You've taken the foundation to a new level. So I'm appreciative of your staff as well. So I just want to thank you all for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for those kind words, Janet. We appreciate that.
Can you guys hear me?
Go ahead. Yes.
Okay. All right. Excellent. I'm simply just going to echo what Janet stated. It's so clear to me that you guys really reviewed these so carefully. And I thank you greatly. April, thank you for your leadership with the committee today. I know you guys take time out of your day and your jobs to get this stuff done as volunteers. And I'm just so grateful for your work. Thank you.
Thank you for those kind words, Judith. And I will close by also saying thank you for allowing me to serve as the chair of this committee. Thank you to each of our committee members who thoroughly read the applications and scored them thoughtfully, and for doing so throughout, a storm. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate PCF so very, very much. I have to say, as somebody who sits on many rank and review committees across the county, that you have made this process easy and seamless. And I appreciate so much how helpful you have been through the process in setting us up for success and allowing these 5 agencies to receive the funding that they've received. And I think it's going to be wonderful for the city of Clearwater.
And then, thank you. And then we have one more comment.
Oh, good. Okay.
Hey everybody, Patrick Doyle from Feeding Tampa Bay. Thank you for the review session. David, you might have mentioned this when you mentioned action steps, so sorry if I missed it. Is there going to be, are we going to receive the full score sheet for our applications? I think it's always helpful for those of us who didn't get funded to see individual points where we can improve. And kind of in that same vein, there was a lot of discussion of sustainability plans. I'm curious if April or anyone else would be willing to share an example, after the meeting of how we can improve sustainability plans in an application.
I can say that, yeah, we'll give you the average committee for each rubric point. So the average score that the committee gave for each rubric. So the sustainability one, you'll see what the average of the committee, looking at the other parts of the application, the urgency, history, and Clearwater. So those you'll each see, and then you'll get all the written comments.
Thank you.
And yes, Patrick, I would be happy to have a discussion following, if that's not if that's not against the rules, I'd be happy to have a discussion with you or anyone, quite frankly, about, just being able to articulate a sustainability plan when requesting one-time funding.
I think the thing that's difficult about sustainability plans for all of us as applicants, and I'm sure everybody can relate, is frequently our sustainability plan is we're going to ask everybody we know for money. And so, yeah, articulating that through the process of application may be helpful. Thank you.
I would say, we don't necessarily need to do it here, but I will say, Patrick, that sometimes simply saying that, right, can be just putting those words in the proposal, which is we are asking for recurring expenses with one-time funding. We're going to be asking everybody we know for money can sometimes be an acceptable sustainability plan. Nonetheless, I've put my, there we go, my email address in the chat there. And if you or anybody wants to reach out to me following this meeting, I'd be happy to have that discussion.
Thanks.
Okay, I think David, Jocelyn, Duggan, I think that we have done what we were asked to do. If there's nothing further of us, I think we can bring the committee to a close.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
April.
Okay, thank you all of you, and have a wonderful next couple of days and a good long weekend. I hope you get a long weekend.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Okay.
all.
Take care.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.